Quick announcement before we jump into the episode. The 8-week parenting pivot where you'll learn how to implement Connect Method parenting, get your kids to want to listen to you, is starting October 28th. Head over to cmp.works/pivot to find out more. There is nothing you have to do, and no one has to do anything for you. Your kids do not have to listen to you. You have to earn that right by creating a relationship where they want to listen to you. Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andy Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. Hey everybody, how are you? Happy Thursday if you're listening to this live. If you're not, happy whatever day it is. I've been thinking a lot about you all. We're leaving Barcelona tomorrow, so it's 9 p.m. as I'm recording this. We've had a full day, lots of stuff happening as we're packing up to go in the afternoon. I guess we leave at 1 p.m. tomorrow. I'm so sad. You know, it's interesting how our emotions work. And we've only been here for a month, but one of my daughters said, and I feel similar, she said, "Oh, it almost feels like this is home." And what has been really fascinating about this journey in Barcelona is feeling the neural pathways shift just by being in a place for a month and creating new normals, creating new habits, creating new routines. It's been a great shakeup for us. And it's not dissimilar to what happens with our parenting. In a short period of time, massive things can shift, habits can start to change, new familiarity, things can start to feel familiar that were completely foreign at first. And what she said, it was Brea who said it today as we were walking back from the city, going to catch a bus back to our place. I thought, oh my gosh, that's what we're doing in the pivot too. We are helping people create a new normal, have a familiarity with something that felt foreign just a few weeks ago. And that's what we're doing. That is the work of creating the new neural pathways that will forever shift your parenting from a correction, a tug of war, what feels like a battle a lot of the time, to cooperation, the kids wanting to listen to you because the relationship's so good, feeling emotionally regulated in situations that used to be really dysregulating. And it's funny because as I was thinking about these two comparisons, when we first got to Barcelona, and the two comparisons are this month we've had in Barcelona and the time people spend in the pivot, or the time I took. I wish I was in a container like the pivot, but laboriously taking about a decade for me to figure this out. But that time period that we have that starts to shift our normal, starts to shift our reality, begins to create a new perception of the world. That's what we've experienced here. And that's what people experience in the pivot. So you probably heard me talk about it before, and I'm going to unashamedly say it again because I feel so passionate about the work we're doing to get Connect Method Parenting out into the world, helping people not just learn about it, but implement it. And that's the difference between what you can get from my book or the podcast is I teach you and I try to help you implement as much as I can. But when you get into a container like the pivot or like mastery, which is the next step after pivot inside of the League of Extraordinarily Connected Parents, which is the umbrella over both those programs. And because of the immersive experience that we create for you, things begin to shift and your new normal replaces your old habits. So that's what we're doing. So if you're ready for better relationships, better connection, more emotional regulation from you to completely change the tone of your family, you're going to want to get in on the pivot. Applications close on the 26th, which is just in a couple of days. This episodes go live on Thursday, and on Saturday, midnight Pacific time, applications close because we start on that Monday, the 28th, and we need a day to finish sorting through all the applications, and then we're going to hit it hard on Monday, which I will be in Rome. So I'm going to be bringing you my Italian energy. Lots of pasta, pizza, gelato. That's what's going to be coming at you on Monday, the 28th. So I hope to see you all there. Another really cool thing that is different. If you have questions, my daughter, Brea, who's my 17-year-old, who's here on this trip with us, is going to be taking calls, answering all things Connect Method Parenting. She'll probably give you some dirt on me if you want her to, give you the real inside scoop, which I would love for you to hear, that the reality of what life looks like just make sure you feel comfortable to come on in. It is a really unique experience because this pivot is still part of the study that we've been doing all year. I revamped how I teach Connect Method Parenting at the end of 2023. I've been teaching and coaching it since 2018, but at the end of 2023, my then 24-year-old son, who's my oldest son, he just turned 25 just a couple of days ago. He sat down with me. He has a brilliant brain. And he said, Mom, we need to look at every part of how you teach Connect Method Parenting and make it the most impactful experience in the shortest amount of time. So that is how the pivot came about. So we launched our first round of the pivot at the beginning of this year, and then decided to spend this entire year dedicated to studying the impact of this program. So we had all the data and the proof, and we'll do a episode with our data study in January or February when we get it all collected after this pivot. But already with 3 rounds, the data is so compelling. I'm honored to be able to bring this work to the parents who are ready for it. It is a collection of me going and finding the most brilliant minds out there that have done the work to find the science that supports it and bring it together in the most concise, simple, doable way, and then pair it with or marry it with a way to retrain our brain. Because we have to understand that this is a legitimate framework, which it absolutely is. It's based by science and data. A lot of the pivot is based on the work of Dr. Neufeld as far as the attachment framework for parenting. And then I marry it with all sorts of things that I've learned along the way to retrain our brains, create new neural pathways, so many modalities I've studied along the way. And we put the two together and it's beautiful. Fireworks, magic, all of the things. In fact, today on office hours, I had a couple parents who have been working consistently with me on office hours about sleep issues, both celebrate wins. And one of them said, I needed to declare this win on the call because my brain wants to think it was just a fluke. It was just magic. And it's important that we don't dismiss the results that come from this because sometimes it does seem too good to be true. We have been so trained to think that external stimuli are the only way that we're going to get our kids to change their behavior. And when this connection-based framework works, sometimes our brain has a hard time believing it. But that is the truth. It's what happens. It creates the long-term benefits that I am personally so grateful for. I mean, we're on this trip right now, which if y'all want me to talk about it, I will more. I could do a whole episode talking about all the things that allowed us to be doing this with our 3 girls. But I have my 16, 17, and 22-year-old girls with me right now. And the fact that we chose to do this, they wanted to be here, the relationships we had, the conversations we're having, it's just unreal. And that's the kind of thing that is possible for everyone to create. I believe you could all create whatever it is you want to do. I've always wanted to travel slowly across the world. So that was an intention I had. So you could create that if you want. I think it's possible for everybody to create whatever dream you have for yourself. But more importantly is the relationships that we've been able to create thanks to this relationship-based approach to living. And it really is a living approach. So if you're interested, come on in. We have up-leveled every round, but this round by far has the most changes in the most productive, positive way possible. Every time we try to make it better and better, it has the most changes that we've ever made in one round. The weekly lessons are all going to be new. We have the option to get a hard copy workbook, which we've had massive demand for that. So that's available this round. We are changing up the way we do weekly evaluations and feedback, the way we're framing up your goals. We call them the Big Mama goal that we're working on. There's so many things that are changing. I'm sure I'm missing something too, but so many things that we have been able to roll out discussion boards. That was one of the other things. So we have a community discussion board inside of the portal, which will feel like a Facebook group. So anyway, all that stuff's happening. It's so exciting. I can't wait to see you all there. So go apply. You're going to go to cmp.works/pivot, or you can just go to the Connect Method Parenting website and then click the banner if you go to the website, the main website, or if you go to cmp.works/pivot, and I'll link that in the show notes. It'll take you right to the application page. Well, kind of. It'll take you right to the information page. Then if you click the button, it'll take you to the application page. And then after that, you'll see where you can pay your deposit, or if you want to talk to Brea, where you can talk to Brea. So go do it. We're going to have so much fun. I don't want you to miss out. If you are ready to get some help to make this a reality. And yeah, we are over Christmas and Thanksgiving and New Year's, but we're taking a couple weeks off, which I think will make it even better than it has before, because you get a couple extra weeks to implement, to assimilate, to all of the things. Apply it because your kids will be home more. It's going to be fantastic. All right, let's get into the meat of the topic today. And it's all going to center around this idea of living in acceptance. We had a coaching call today, actually, the day I'm recording this. And one of the moms got in, shared some huge wins, and said in retrospect, when I asked her, well, how have you gotten here? She said, I've decided to live in acceptance. It's so good. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about manuals and unconscious rules and conscious rules. But really at the heart of all of it, it's about living in acceptance. So let's dive in. The manual. Learned about this a while ago. It changed my world. It's this invisible rule book that we've written for the people in our lives without them knowing, oftentimes without us knowing. And there's a difference between the rules I'm going to talk about with the manual and the rules we just have to have a healthy, functioning home. So let me delineate the difference right off the bat, and then we're going to break it down the rest of the time. A rule that we have that is a messy rule or a manual rule is one that is linked to our emotions. So if our children misbehave, we feel justified to say, hey, the reason I'm upset is because of how you behaved. We don't take ownership for our emotions. We don't take ownership for how we're feeling. We don't think we need to feel anything differently. So we go around fooling ourselves into thinking, hey, it's because my kids are misbehaving. It's because they're so rowdy. It's because they're not doing their chores. It's because they're not listening to what I say. That's why I'm frustrated. And so that is what encapsulates the manual or these unwritten rules we have for people. So the way you know you have them is when somebody or something happens and you get irritated. The reason you're getting irritated is because you have an expectation that isn't getting met and you think that someone else should be doing something different. And because they're not doing something different, you are feeling the way you're feeling. Does that make sense? Once I started teaching and coaching Connect Method Parenting in 2018, I realized everyone has a set of rule books for everyone else. It's not just me, which was really reassuring. And we want to dust those suckers off, take a look at them, and for the most part, throw them all away because they do not serve us. They do not serve our kids. Now, this is different than having clear rules that create structure and order in our home. For example, we don't take phones into our bedrooms. We go to bed at 8 p.m. We do our homework before we watch TV. Those are rules that are helpful out of service. The rules I'm talking about are coming from a place of emotional immaturity, and we all do it. So I don't say that in a judgy way. I just want to be clear that there's a very big difference between the two sets of rules. The rules from the invisible rule book and the rules from the conscious rule book. We're going to talk about it like that. I just came up with that. I think that's a very good way to say it. Conscious rules and unconscious rules. Ooh, I like that even better. We're just coming up with ideas on the fly here today. So conscious rules, unconscious rules. When we are in the world of unconscious, which is this invisible rule book, our emotional status is linked to other people's behavior, and we feel justified in it being that way. And we are aware that our emotional state is impacted only by how we are perceiving the outside world, and that it's our job to take ownership for how we're feeling. I'm not going to blame my kids because they left a mess for me becoming dysregulated. If I become dysregulated, I'm going to take ownership for that. This is like high level emotional maturity, emotional adulthood versus emotional childhood. And I just want to be clear too, that I don't think there's anything wrong with vacillating between the two, as long as we're noticing it and iterating and improving. It's when we become convinced that having these unconscious rules and becoming a victim of all the things our kids are doing, that's when we are going to feel very stuck, hopeless. Things are not going to go our way. But when we think it is reasonable that somebody else should behave a certain way, so we feel a certain way, it's going to be a very sad place to be. The truth is, there's nothing you have to do, and no one has to do anything for you. When we're in relationships where we feel responsible for someone else's needs and they feel responsible for our needs, it creates a cycle of dysfunction. And it goes both ways. If we are waiting for our kids to behave a certain way so we feel happy, we also have to live in the cycle of believing that when they misbehave, we feel unhappy. And we are at the effect of everything outside of us. I was in office hours today and one of the moms got on and she was sharing this really fantastic win. Actually, 2 wins. One was a sleep win. She'd been struggling with getting one of her kiddos to sleep and we'd been working on it for a while. and she could see progress. The child was willing to go into their crib now, willing to just do some things that they hadn't been willing to do. The crib had become a really tricky place where the child was arching its back and really having a lot of resistance. And she shared this when everybody on the call was just, I could just feel the energy, and people were typing in the chat like, good job. This is so encouraging. And then she shared another win with a daughter who was having a lot of emotions around going to school and that separation that's totally normal, and how they had made massive progress with that. And anyway, was talking about all the things that we've been working on. And I asked her, hey, how do you think you got there? And she said, I decided finally to take your advice, Andy, and to try living in the world of acceptance and drop all my expectations. She said, I stopped for the sleep one. She said, I stopped trying to do all the things the sleep experts said. And I just started to do what you had asked me to do, which was drop expectations, accept that nothing's gone wrong, be really in a beautiful place of acceptance, and give lots of connection. And she's like, it's actually working. It's so good. All the other things I tried didn't work, but this worked. And I said, okay, so how would you summarize it? The process that's gotten you to the place you are. And she said, living in the world of acceptance. I think is how she said it. And I loved it. I said, living in acceptance. And that's what I'm talking about today, as we're talking about unconscious and conscious rules. When we are living in the state of giving very conscious rules and structure, and it's out of a place of service, and we're not getting emotionally impacted by the behavior of our kids, we are living in acceptance, because we have separated ourselves emotionally from, and I mean this in a good way. I'm not saying you're not emotionally connected to your children. I'm saying you aren't emotionally connected to their behavior in a way that creates judgment and backlash and gets you in a helpless place. You've disconnected that pattern, that link. And it's great that you've disconnected, because it shouldn't have never been there. It's something we humans do, but it's not helpful. And so we've disconnected the link, and we're living in acceptance instead of resistance, because that link is resistance. I am going to not be happy unless you do XYZ. I'm only going to be happy if you do XYZ. So they clean their room, happy. Don't clean their room, unhappy. So instead, living in acceptance is, I'm going to be happy regardless of if they clean their room or not. And I'm going to handle whatever happens in a way that I respect. Clean, conscious rules. Unconscious, I'm going to blame, I'm going to get frustrated, I'm going to think it's someone else's fault, and it's a painful place to live. I've done it, and it's not fun. And the more you've done that, the more you realize, ooh, I do not want to dip my toe into that pool of resistance and judgment and frustration, because it doesn't help me, it doesn't help my children, it doesn't improve behavior, it doesn't make me a great parent. When we get into that cycle, we end up trying to just manage each other's behavior in order to feel happy. Well, our kids don't actually do a very good job of doing this, but we try to manage their behavior so that we feel happy. Nobody wins. Here's the truth, the hard, cold truth that will set you free. You can't control anyone else. And no matter what they do, it won't make you as happy as you think it will. What do you think about that? You cannot control anyone else. Yes, we have responsibility to teach our kids lessons. Yes, we have a responsibility to teach them how to be good humans. We want them to have those morals, those values. Absolutely. You don't do it by controlling them. In fact, I was having a conversation with a teenager fairly recently, and she was talking about how controlled she felt by her parents. And she said, the funniest thing is that the more I feel compelled, I feel the pressure, I feel them wanting me to do this thing, the more I just don't want to do it. The truth is, humans don't want to be changed by someone else. We want to change, we want to progress. And I know this particular teenager is very motivated to improve herself and change, not at all motivated when she feels pressure from someone else. And I felt this so strongly when I got married with my husband. He has been the best teacher in the most incredible way. It was challenging, but it's been so good. I'm really grateful for it. That he just refuses to be controlled, and he doesn't play that game at all. And it helped wake me up and helped me see where I was being controlling and where I was trying to control him to feel a certain way, and understanding that other humans cannot, we literally can't control them. I mean, can we artificially manipulate and control them? Kind of. Can you threaten someone with something big enough that they are willing to comply? Yes. Does that change them? No. Does that truly impact their intrinsic motivation to have a desire to do the thing that you want to do? No. If you said to your child, hey, I will pay you $1,000 to clean your room, will they clean the room? Probably, especially if they're a teenager. Does that increase their desire to clean their room next week? Absolutely not. In fact, I was just reading this study where I wish I had all the, context. I'm just doing it off memory here, so I don't remember where it was from, but it was a study where they divided these kids into two groups, the control group and the other group that was getting rewards. And they were engaging the kids in doing something. I think they got a choice of a few things to do, and they got to choose something they liked to do. So it wasn't even something they didn't want to do. And the group that was the control group that didn't get any reward did the whole process. The group and it was one by one, but they were clumped into two different groups. And the group that got the reward did their little task, and then they brought them back and they asked them to do it again. And the group that got the reward, I wish I had the exact numbers in front of me, but they were less likely, percentage-wise, they did this task the second time less frequently than the group that had no reward. And originally this blew the researchers' minds a little bit because they were convinced that rewards incentivized people for the long run. And what they found is it only incentivized them in the moment, but at the cost of their incentive down the road. So yeah, you can fool yourself into thinking, hey, if I incentivize them with the right thing, their behavior will change. Or if I threaten to take something away that they really like, I can control them. To a degree, that's true, but it's not going to get you what you really want with a parent-child relationship, which is impact, influence, and ultimately to have your child be successful. So we don't want to be using unconscious rules. We don't want to be getting into this manual rule book that's not in service of our child, that's really in service of us. Really, really is because I want to feel a certain way. So I'm going to, in one case, you could say indulge a child. I'm going to give them this reward. I'm going to give them everything they want because I don't want the pushback, or I want the result of what they will create if I give them this thing and that makes me feel good. Do you see how you're still outsourcing the emotional work to something else or someone else? So let's circle back. There is nothing you have to do, and no one has to do anything for you. Your kids do not have to listen to you. You have to earn that right by creating a relationship where they want to listen to you. So we don't want to be in relationships where the responsibility emotionally is on our kids. That's going to feel really terrible for them. It's going to create a cycle of control. We end up trying to manage them to feel better. So here's the truth. You can't control anyone else. And our kids clearly show us this when we start feeding them baby food that they don't like. They spit it out. They're clearly saying, you can't control me. Nice try. If you want to impart your values and your morals, you're going to have to do it in a way that I will be open to receiving it. And I choose it. You're not going to be able to put it on me. So they try to tell us that from the beginning, and we're usually a little reluctant. So my suggestion is that acknowledge that we all have manuals for people, and then take a step back and start focusing on the manual you've written for yourself and take 100% responsibility for your emotions instead of thinking that your emotions are happening because of someone else. So the first step, look at the manual, look at the unconscious rules you've created for yourself. Where's the suffering? Where are you expecting other people to do things in a different way so that you feel better? And spoiler alert, the reason you want someone else to change is because you believe it's going to make you feel better when they do. And it will not permanently change the way you feel. You might get a little hit initially, but that's not coming from their behavior. It's coming from your thought about the behavior. So take a step back to the beginning of the discussion. Remember, it's not other people's behavior that causes our feelings. It's what we think about their behavior. So when someone like our child follows this unconscious rule and they do something like, hey, pick up after themselves, they clean their room, they do their homework, and we tell ourselves, oh my gosh, they love me, they respect me, they care about my rules, that makes us feel good. But when they don't follow our unconscious rules, we interpret them as negative. So then we feel bad and we're giving our emotional power away. We're trying to tell other people how to act instead of taking responsibility for how we feel. And if you want to show up as a confident, capable, emotionally regulated parent, learning how to own the emotions you're having and not make it anyone else's problem is going to be life-changing. When we think that someone else's behavior controls our emotions, we're setting ourselves up to not only feel bad, but to feel powerless, because the only way to feel better is if that other person changes. And if you're anything like me, you've probably gone to extreme lengths trying to get your kids to act differently so you can feel differently. But here's the reminder. The reason why we try to change someone else's behavior is because we think it will make us feel better. And that's not possible someone else's behavior, someone else's actions, can't determine how we feel. It's only what we think, our perception about their behavior that affects us. When I remember this, I can take a breath. I'm able to stop controlling them and focus on my own emotions. So think about all the people in your life that you have manuals for, unconscious rules for, all of the people that when they do something, trigger an emotional response inside of you. And the easiest ones to pick up on will be the negative emotional responses you're having when your kids are misbehaving. Those are the easiest for us parents, because when our brain goes into, I'm frustrated because you didn't do your dishes. I'm frustrated because you didn't do your homework. I'm frustrated because you are being a trial at bedtime. Ding, ding, ding. You have an unconscious rule that's causing you to be a parent that you probably don't want to be. A dysregulated parent that's not taking full ownership for their emotions, that's not able to keep their prefrontal cortex in, that's not able to set a firm and compassionate limit. And that's really what's possible for you if you can start to notice these unconscious rules. The more you drop them, the more you can live in acceptance. The more you can stay emotionally regulated regardless of the shenanigans they're all doing. So when we have an unconscious rule for somebody, it looks something like, I need you to, for example, clean your room so that I can feel like a good parent. I can feel happy. If you don't clean your room, then I'm going to feel upset and disappointed. Versus a conscious rule is, hey, you need to clean your room before you watch TV, which is not the same thing as the unconscious rule of saying, you didn't make your bed. Now I'm upset and disappointed and you can't hang out with friends. The second one I said is a form of emotional, almost blackmail. And it's crucial to separate these two things and realize that making requests of others without tying our emotional well-being to their actions is healthy. It's normal. It's good. We need to do this as parents. We need to be able to create very conscious rule setting. I call it connective limits in my programs. It's very different than even boundaries sometimes can be misunderstood as this controlling thing. So I'm separating myself from any language that might be misinterpreted. So I'm separating from any language that might be misunderstood as control centered to a setting limit that's very conscious, where you're in a place of compassion and firmness. You need to have those two emotions. So parents will come to me sometimes when I'm explaining this and say, okay, so you're telling me I shouldn't tell my kids that they shouldn't leave their toys everywhere, or I shouldn't tell my kids that they need to be home at a certain time, or I shouldn't tell my kids that they need to participate in family activities. And I say, absolutely, you can make those requests of your kids. But when you tie your emotional happiness to whether they respond or not, that's when you get into trouble. One of the ways I distinguish these two things is wanting versus needing. So I want them to come to the family activity. I want them to put their toys away. I want them to, whatever it is, go to bed on time. But I don't need them to do any of those things for me to feel a certain way. I get to feel a certain way, compassionate, confident, capable, peaceful, whatever it is for you, accepting, regardless of how they're acting. When you start banging your head against the wall and trying to manipulate them so they'll behave the way you want to, so that you'll ultimately feel better, that's when you're going to get yourself into a spiral of negativity. That's the unconscious rules. That's the manual that I'm talking about. That's the heavy book of rules that you have, and what you make it mean when your child doesn't follow them is not helpful for you or your child. The alternative is you make a request, and if they don't honor the request, you take 100% emotional responsibility for how you feel. And if you need to set a firm limit, you need to hold that rule. Hey, we don't watch TV till we do our homework. You are setting that rule. You are taking 100% responsibility, and you're holding space for whatever might come up for them. The resistance, the meltdown, the tantrum, whatever it is. This is how you're going to change your life and your parenting. This is how you're going to become such a conscious parent, one that is so intentional and emotionally regulated in a way that you weren't able to before. It's because you're looking at all of the times where you get emotionally triggered in a negative way when someone doesn't do what you want them to do, and you're investigating it, you're evaluating it, you're looking at, why was I so upset? Why did I make that mean something so negative about myself? I don't need to make that mean that. What can I make it mean instead? This is the work we're doing in the pivot. This is the work we do with Connect Method Parenting when parents come in and work with me, is learning how to be emotionally resilient in a way that allows you to show up as a parent you respect regardless of what's going on. So I really want to give you the suggestion that it is possible for you to let go of all these unconscious rules that are causing you to try to control everyone in your life, especially your kids. The people that you have these unconscious rules for, these manuals, these rule books, let them go and consider having clear rules with your kids and setting very conscious limits if necessary, with no strings attached emotionally to what they're doing. You're not going to try to control them. You want them to do this thing. You don't need them to do this thing to feel emotionally regulated. And then focus on trying to control yourself and your response to how other people behave. And I want you to imagine what your life would be like. You can live in acceptance. We don't need to get angry or frustrated. It's totally something that we can train our brains to do. It's a choice that we have that we can exercise. We might not have the capacity to do it right now. Totally fine. But we have the potential within us to develop the ability to stay emotionally regulated no matter what our kids are doing. You can parent from this place of compassion and understanding and connection. You don't have to get worked up when your kids don't do what you ask. And when we start allowing our kids to be who they are without trying to control them, without trying to change them, you're going to be so much calmer. You're going to stop interpreting their behavior as something negative, and instead you're going to be able to listen. You're going to be able to lean in. You're going to be able to understand them. You're going to be able to start hearing their perspective on things. You're going to be able to hold space for the emotions they have. You're going to understand them better. They're going to feel understood. When I first became a parent, and I had so many kids right off the bat, well, once I started having my first one, boom, 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 they came really fast. And I had a really clear expectation of what I wanted bedtime to be like. Wanted it to be this beautiful bonding thing where we would read a book and I'd sing songs and we'd wind down and everybody would be so happy to be there. And yeah, it was going to be magical. The intentions were good, but I started getting really needy. I needed my kids to appreciate what I was doing for bedtime so that I could feel a certain way. And surprise, surprise, it didn't start going so well. They could feel my neediness, my graspiness. And I made it mean so many negative things about my kids and about myself that it wasn't working. And I kept nagging and getting frustrated. And as you can imagine, it just made things worse. And it wasn't until I decided how I wanted to show up at bedtime, regardless of what the kids did, that everything started to shift for me. It seems so obvious in hindsight that I was creating so much discomfort for myself because of the frustration I was feeling towards my kids. But in the moment, I didn't see it. It was very unconscious. And I want you to be so kind to yourself as you're discovering these different places where you have unconscious rules, where you have manuals for people, because that is a requirement, to be honest, to heal them. If you judge yourself for being judgmental, you're going to get stuck in judgment, cycle of judgment. So when you release your rules and expectations, when you live in the land of acceptance, things are going to get better, not worse. I promise you, they will get better, not worse. You will feel better regardless of how they behave. And that is everything. That's the only thing you have to control. So I want you to think about your child or your partner and consider 3 things you wish they would do. Maybe do their chores, do their homework, be kinder to their siblings, go to bed when you ask them to. Come up with 3 things, whatever it is. Take a moment to think about the 3 things and then why you want them to do those things. And then how you would imagine that if they did those things, you would feel. Now reflect on your thoughts. Would you feel respected, loved, or appreciated if they acted the way you wanted them to? Do you have those thoughts available to you right now without them changing? If you can realize that your emotions come from your thoughts, not from their actions, not from their behavior, you've scored big time. You don't have to change anyone else to feel better. You can feel good based on how you decide to think about the situation. You can choose to focus on your own emotional well-being rather than feeling entitled to certain behaviors from other people that will create an emotional well-being state that you want. You can choose how you want to feel no matter what anyone else does. So when your child doesn't initially get right up to do their chores, and you have to remind them again, you get to choose how you want to feel. You can either feel frustrated that they're not going and doing it or that you have to constantly remind them, or you can feel calm and connected and live in acceptance. If you let your manuals go, if you let your unconscious rules go, your relationships are going to improve. Your situations are going to improve. So take some time to think about it. Are you ready to give up your manuals? Are you willing to release expectations, how other people should behave, and instead put that energy into creating the best life you can, one that isn't dependent on anyone else's behavior? I promise it's a game changer. living in acceptance is so much better than living in resistance. Try it out. Until next time, take care. Peace. If you enjoyed this episode, check out the last 8-week parenting pivot that we're doing this year. It's starting October 28th. It was going to start sooner, but I'm currently traveling internationally with my family and I overestimated how productive I'd be, so we pushed it back a couple of weeks. The pivot is where you're going to learn the entire Connect Method parenting framework in just 8 weeks, helping you have more cooperation, better listening, transitioning from corrective to connective parenting so that your kids actually want to listen to you. If you've been listening to the podcast and you love what we talk about here, but you're having trouble making that transition in your home, this is the ticket for you. It's the last pivot of the study also, which means that you can participate basically for free. In 8 weeks, you put a $200 deposit down. If you go through the entire pivot and do all of the things I ask so that we can track the progress and the results that Connect Method Parenting has in your home, then you get the deposit back at the end, which is so fantastic. Go to cmp.works/pivot. You're going to get all the details there. This is an 8-week parenting boot camp. It is not for the faint of heart, but it's for those who are really ready for a change. If you want to figure out how to get your kids to want to listen to you, if you want to feel more confident in your parenting, you're going to want to come jump in the pivot. I'm going to show you step by step how you go from correction-based techniques to connection-based techniques. We're not going to use consequences, threats, timeouts, any of that anymore. We're going to replace it with a connection-based framework. You're going to get better results and feel so much better. And let's have a little bit of fun. So if you're ready, jump over to cmp.works/pivot. You can get all of the info there. We're starting October 28th. I'm going to finish this with some comments from other parents who have gone through previous pivots, which, by the way, the average is 200% plus increase in listening, confidence, feeling more capable of showing up in a connective, not corrective way. So I'll drop their comments here. Take a listen. And if you're interested, go over to cmp.works/pivot. I'll put it in the show notes too. Hope to see you there. We'll talk to you later, guys. Bye.
Are we only 2 weeks in? It's like night and day already. There's just been this total shift.
Yeah, it's crazy. I feel like I've packed in 20 years of counseling or something. Just seeing so much gold coming out of him as I've changed my belief about him in that situation and erased the 20-year-long narrative attached.
Hearts are so connected. So yeah, that has been really good. Thank you. I'm so grateful. And this really has been huge, such an answer to prayer for us.
I just can never express how great this has been and how thankful I am. It's been everything. It's been so good.
I really, really see the change.